What's the deal with Social Security tax brackets? So my man Marcus sent this email to me. It's an article he couldn't figure out what the link was, so he just copied and pasted. Very good article to read, and we're going to dive into this because the ignorance of the tax brackets is just, there's no exception, there's no excuse for being ignorant of the tax brackets, that's for sure. So anyway, the Social Security income thresholds haven't changed since they were first introduced in the 1980s. That's when Reagan signed a bill to raise the tax Social Security benefits. Who passed the legislation? Well, the Senate was controlled by the Democrats. The House was controlled by the Democrats. Reagan doesn't pass legislation. He just signs the legislation, the president, that was issued to him. Who is in the Senate to pass that legislation to tax Social Security benefits? Oh, Sniffy Joe Biden. Oh, but in 1993, who was in the Senate to pass the increase in Social Security tax benefits? Oh, Sniffy Joe Biden. But he's going to protect your Social Security from Trump, even though he's the one who reduced your benefits. That's just a fact. But Democrats don't want to hear that because they don't believe in the truth. The income tax brackets haven't been changed since 1980s and never have been adjusted for inflation, resulting in what some people call a stealth tax, 100%. Every year, more seniors end up crossing into the minimum thresholds and are required to pay taxes. From 1999, we only had 7.4% of the tax returns were paying taxable Social Security benefits, or taxes on their Social Security, if you will. By 2046, it's expected to reach over 50%. Half the citizens receiving Social Security will pay taxes on their Social Security benefits. All right. The people who are most negatively impacted are those whose wages have only been increasing because inflation. Low-income people were below $25,000 was tax-free. Inflation has brought them right over $25,000. With Congress divided, changing tax laws will be difficult. Yep. I don't know where the tax laws are going to be, but tax funding is going to be. It's definitely difficult to make decisions. All right. So one of the things is low-income people, they don't pay any taxes on their Social Security, so it doesn't affect them. It affects the middle class. The Republican base. And the Republican politicians who supposedly are representing us, they do nothing to decrease our taxation on Social Security benefits. Nothing at all. But yet, they're going to pass an anti-Semitic hate law, which is pure freaking Orwellian. And yet, they're going to give money to Ukraine. And they're not going to do anything for the southern border. The whole thing is insane. Look, the Democrats are evil. The Republicans are just bad. That's all there is to it. But anyway, this is why you subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because I'm going to show with you something here why this isn't foreign. And if you're ignorant about the tax rates historically, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. I kind of hate that. It's such a cliche saying, but when it comes to taxation, if you don't know your history, you're bound to lose money. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So Social Security wasn't indexed for inflation, right, in terms of taxation. Alternative minimum tax wasn't indexed to inflation. And even your old buddy Josh got sucked into AMT in 2017. Had to pay an extra $5,000 of taxes for AMT. It's crazy. It's never supposed to be for moderately affluent middle class earners. It wasn't. It was never supposed to be like that. So Social Security taxation was never supposed to be, in terms of the proposed legislation, to tax lower and middle class income Social Security recipients. Never. What else wasn't adjusted for inflation? Let's take a look, shall we? So we're going to go to the Tax Foundation, and we're going to show you something here. In 1964, actually go to 1965. It'll be a little bit clearer. In 1965, you needed this is married filing jointly, you needed $4,000 of taxable income. Taxable income is after standard deductions or itemizations, to be in the 19% tax bracket in 1965. All right. And that's a reduction because in 1964, $4,000 of income puts you in the 20% tax bracket. Actually, even look at 1963. Let's see. 1963, $4,000 of income puts you in the 22% tax bracket. Again, that's taxable income. Yeah, same thing. So I just want to point out the 4,000. So again, 1965, if you had $4,000 of income, you were in the 19% tax bracket. All right, everybody with me so far? We're going to scroll all the way up to 1976. 1976. Check this out. Your $4,000 of taxable income, where'd it go, was still in the 19% tax bracket. Anyone find that odd? So $4,000 of taxable income, again, that's after standard deductions and exemptions and or itemization deductions. In 1964, you had $4,000 of taxable income. You had a 20% tax bracket. 1976, well above 10 years later, that $4,000, you're still in a 19% tax bracket. Anything changed from 1964 to 1976? Massive amounts of inflation. Bracket creep. So a guy that was making $1,000 in 1964 is now making at least $4,000 because of inflation, the massive amounts of inflation. So now he's going up to a higher and higher tax bracket, not because he's making more net income, but because inflation is pushing him in a higher and higher tax bracket. Even Stephen King wrote about that in a book, one of his books he had written about in the late 70s, early 80s, that talked about paying more and more taxes on basically the same amount of income. Because again, $4,000 in 1966 buys this one basket of goods. That same $4,000 in 1976 buys a much reduced basket of goods, except now you got to pay more taxes on it. That's bracket creep. They do the same thing with it. They did it with AMT. They did it with Social Security. They got rid of the AMT because Trump. But if we go back to getting rid of TCJA, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, it's coming right back. Obama had no inflation for net investment income tax and the Medicare surtax. I can't remember if the Medicare surtax is it for. I think it's still at 200, 250. I think it is. So more and more people be sucked into the Medicare surtax too. The Republicans got rid of the NIIT not being adjusted for inflation, but the Medicare surtax is not adjusted for inflation. Still $200,000 for singles and $250 for married, if memory serves. Dude, I'm telling you, man, anytime there's some evil stuff these guys do. And then we can even go back to 1977. So now $4,000 is now 19%. They give us a tax cut. They raise the amount of money that would put you in the 19% tax bracket, which is now $7,200. All right, so again, you had to have $4,000 all the way from 1964 to 1976 to be in the 19 or 20% tax bracket. And you had $4,000 in 1964, bought a hell of a lot more money than it did goods than it did in 1976. That's the tax code right there, man. And it wasn't until Carter did some good stuff. He was a better president than frickin' Nixon. I'll tell you that right now. He did some good stuff. Reagan was obviously much, much better than Carter, but Carter set it off in terms of deregulation, trying to moderate the tax codes, but he didn't do enough, obviously. And Nixon was just horrible. Actually, let's just go back to 1960, just see what the tax brackets were then, because this is bracket creep. That's what it's called right there. And you got to be paying attention to stuff. Yeah, 1960, 4,000, you're still in a 22% tax bracket. Isn't that crazy? 1958, with Eisenhower and Nixon. Remember, 1958, 4,000 still in a 22% tax bracket with Republicans, Eisenhower and Nixon. 1955, 4,000, 22% tax bracket. Man, look at that. From that's freaking nuts, dude. $4,000 in 1952, putting a 24% tax bracket, but $4,000 in 1976 was a 19% tax bracket. They did reduce the brackets, but they didn't reduce it by much. That's crazy. Anyway, love your thoughts. God bless. Don't forget to subscribe. See ya.